We spend our entire lives constructing narratives about ourselves. I'm successful, I'm wounded, I'm creative, I'm broken, I'm strong. These stories become the masks we wear, the personalities we project, the ideas and identities we defend. But beneath all of these are carefully crafted layers of lies, a profound question that most of us never dare to ask until we have to ask it. Who am I when I remove the mask? From the moment we're born, we begin assembling our personal mythology. We gather experiences like building blocks, cementing them together with interpretations, judgments, and meanings. A childhood event becomes the reason I am this way. A relationship becomes proof of my self worth. A failure then becomes evidence of my limitations. These narratives are not inherently problematic. They help us navigate the world, make sense of chaos, and communicate our experiences to others. The danger emerges when we forget that we are the authors of these stories, not their characters. And that's exactly what happens. We mistake the mask for the face, the personality for the person, the role for the actor, and the story for the storyteller. Consider this: every label you've ever attached to yourself, introvert, extrovert, damaged, healed, smart, foolish, exists only in the realm of thought. Strip away the mental commentary, and what remains? Not the absence of self, but something far more fundamental, far more real. Our personalities are elaborate performances, and this is what we've got to realize. They've been refined over decades of practice. We learn which behaviors earn approval, which expressions invite connection, and which aspects of ourselves should remain hidden. Layer by layer, mask by mask, we build an identity that feels so solid, so undeniable, that we never even question its foundation. Yet this constructed self is the ephemeral. Yet this constructed self is as ephemeral as morning mist. It shifts with circumstances, morphs with our relationships, and transforms with time. The you identity at 20 bears little resemblance to the you understand at 50. And yet, something constant persists through all of these changes, that unchanging internal presence that is not your personality, it's your consciousness itself. Your divine, sacred self has no need for masks because it has no need to perform, to act. It simply is. It doesn't require validation because it exists prior to all judgment. It doesn't fear exposure because it has nothing to hide. It is the pure awareness that witnesses every thought, every emotion, every sensation, including the thoughts about who you think you really are. So the masks of personality that were constructed to protect us begin to deceive us at some point. And it's at that point that we need to move beyond the narrative prison of the personality. What I mean by that is we imprison ourselves in stories of limitation, boundaries that don't serve us. We believe, I can't do this because of what happened to me. I'll never be happy because I'm not that kind of person. This is simply who I am, and we try to accept that. These limiting statements feel like truth, but actually, they're choices, which is good news. Choices to identify with a narrative or a story rather than with the boundless awareness that creates all narratives. It's just too scary to bear at first. Limitation comes with certainty. A boundless existence comes with a lot of mystery, a lot of uncertainty. What would happen if you stopped defending your story? Not abandoned it necessarily, but held it more lightly, recognized it as one possible interpretation of yourself among infinite others. The personality you've constructed would still function. You could still navigate the practical world, but you would no longer be trapped inside it, limited. This is what awakening means, spiritual awakening, recognizing that you are not the character in the story, but rather the consciousness in which all stories appear. You're not the wave believing itself separate from the ocean. You are the ocean temporarily expressing itself as a wave, as a construct that can be seen. Your sacred self, that which you truly are beneath all psychological constructions, cannot be described in words because it exists prior to language, prior to story. It cannot be measured or quantified easily because it exists prior to all categories. It cannot be improved or damaged because it exists beyond the realm of time and change. You see, that which is real never changes. And that's how we know what's real. It simply never changes. So this may sound abstract, even mystical, but it's actually the most direct, immediate truth available. Right now, in this moment, there is awareness present. That awareness is listening to these words, processing their meaning, perhaps agreeing or disagreeing with the dualistic mind. But the awareness itself, the consciousness, the pure knowing that precedes all content and story remains untouched by what it knows. So here's the good news here. You are that awareness, not the thoughts you have about yourself, but the consciousness that knows those thoughts. Not your memories, but the presence that witnesses memory. Definitely not your personality, but the spaciousness in which personality appears. Discovering who you are without your story doesn't mean becoming a passive or disconnected being. On the contrary, really, it means engaging with life from a deep, profound place of freedom where you're no longer defending a fixed identity, a limited identity. Rather, you become infinitely more adaptable, more creative, more alive. The masks of personality can still be worn. They are integrated and included, transcended and dissolved. But at some point through this awakening process, you now know they're masks. You can play your roles in the theater of life without forgetting that you're the actor, not the part. All the world is a stage, as Shakespeare said, and we play many roles, but playing roles really gets us nowhere. It's the truth that will indeed set us free. You can experience emotion without believing you are the emotions. You can think thoughts without believing you are your thoughts. But it's something that you need to do with the contemplative mind because it's something we forget. You see, when we identify with the mask or the persona, We really believe that's who we are, but that's not who we are. That's the constructed self, and all things constructed must come undone. This shift in perspective changes everything. Suffering that once seemed inevitable reveals itself as optional. So here comes the good news, limitations that felt permanent dissolve like fog in sunlight. Depression, disorder, dis-ease, a disordered personality, a disordered mask is something that can be removed, even if you've worn it decade after decade. This is how we heal our anxiety, our suffering, the deeper pain. That desperate search for wholeness ends when you realize you were never broken to begin with. You were only identified with a story about being broken. So, what we can do is start with the practice of remembering. We need to ask how we can access this authentic, sacred self, this pure awareness beneath the mask, which is done not through more doing, but through stopping. Stopping is the magic that we found many years ago. That was the catalyst for healing deep, deep and profound suffering. So, not through more doing, but through stopping. It's like the binary system. Doing is a one, stopping is a zero. You need both. But when you're looking for an awakening, a paradigm shift, you need to stop. You need to get into the gap between thought, feeling, and behavior, between stimulus and response. So we don't become enlightened or awakened through accumulating more knowledge, but through realizing what you think you know may not be all there is. So we don't need more information, information. In other words, constructed information. At some point, we need inspiration, inspiration that cannot be seen. So we start a paradigm shift simply by noticing. And of course, noticing is a gift. Throughout your day, you can pause and ask, who is aware right now? Not what am I aware of, but who is the awareness itself? That's contemplative practice at its finest. So you don't find the answers in the thought. The question itself points beyond thought to the silent witness that perceives all thought. So remember, getting to zero, stillness, is to be still and know that I am God. It's in stopping that we really begin. If we work with contemplative practice of being still and aware, we get to notice how our sense of self contracts around the story. We can even feel the tension of defending an identity, of trying to prove our worth, of trying to maintain a particular image. And if anyone questions it, we defend it. And defense is the first act of war. So if we see all of this happening and we don't engage, we can actually notice the spaciousness, the relief that comes when you let that contradiction soften, even for a moment or two at first. Your sacred self doesn't need to be created or earned. It's already present, patiently waiting beneath every mask you've ever worn, beneath the codependent, beneath the perfectionist, the controller, the victim, and the actor. So who are you without your story then? You are the eternal, unchanging consciousness that gives rise to every story. Your true identity is the space in which all experience occurs. You are the light by which all things are known. And that light we call accessing your contemplative intelligence, your highest or meta intelligence that is beyond IQ, accessed through EQ, and it's available to everybody. This isn't a philosophical position to adopt or a belief to defend, but this knowledge, this awakening is an invitation to direct recognition, to seeing through the illusions that separate and start rediscovering what you've always been. It's like a homecoming, really, the journey back home to sacred self. The masks of personality have served their purpose for all of us, and they've served their purpose well, but they've helped us navigate a complex world. They've helped us express unique perspectives, and they've helped us to connect with others, to survive. But they were never meant to become prisons, which they become over time. And that is because the truth needs to set us free. You cannot stay fake, false, masked. You need to become who you really, really are. And that's the journey of life. It's very simple, really. It's like the metamorphosis of a worm into a butterfly. We do exactly the same thing. Personalities become prisons, and that is where depression, anxiety, and everything else begin. But behind every mask and beneath every story, your divine self remains pristine, untouched, healthy, and whole. The question isn't whether you can find this sacred awareness or this sacred self, it's whether you're willing to stop long enough to notice that you've never been anything else. To thine own self be true.